Funding for Shaperless is provided by
Squarespace, the sponsor of today's video. Persona 3. Arguably the most influential title Atlus ever released. The one that launched the modern Persona style as we know it today. It's a little bit rough around the edges, and it's just barely my least favorite of the big three. But with that said, it's still better than like 80% of other games I've played. Since this was the series' first attempt at social links, it's generally agreed upon that this batch of them isn't the all-time best. We don't quite have as many extreme highs as we'd see in the 4 and 5 links. But on the other hand, I'd argue that for the most part, this game doesn't hit as many lows as the worst social links in 4 and 5 do. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, it's probably because this one only has one automatic social link. Automatic social links are terrible, did you know that? But on top of that, there's a lot of social links in this game that some people dismiss as being boring or generic, but I actually really like a lot, and I think overall they're pretty underrated. And I can't wait to get into them. As always, I'm gonna be looking at these social links and judging them by the quality of the stories they tell. Not only are we looking at the links available in the main Persona 3 timeline, but we're also going to include the 8 links exclusive to the Femc route in Persona 3 Portable. You know, the one where you play as a woman and thus lose the ability to be a gamer, but as a trade-off, you can get to know Ken really well. For the main Persona 3 links, I wanted to be upfront and say that I'm looking at the reload versions of them, which tell the exact same stories, but just have slightly altered dialogue. So if that's a problem for you, now you know, you can leave the video, bye. Even though I'm looking at reload, however, I'm not gonna let the quality of the voice acting in these social links affect the ranking at all, since that would put the Femc links at a disadvantage. Plus, this is about the quality of the stories anyway. And much like the previous rankings, I'm not factoring in my feelings on the character involved. This is solely a story ranking, nothing else. I think that's about it. Let's get into it now with the worst social link this game has to offer.
Disappointment in the game of life.
Oh, brother, Kenji stinks! I've never liked this social link, and nothing has changed as the years have gone on. The older I get, the less I want to put up with Kenji's bullshit. The entire link is he wants to date a teacher. That's the story. That's the whole thing. That's all his character does. He just really wants to date his teacher, I guess. Look, I know it's fairly common to be in high school and have a crush on your teacher, but to actively try and pursue them? That's really weird. And it's also weird that you don't have any option to not support this. Generally, the most negative thing you can say to him is, sure, whatever. Then he misinterprets things between them and thinks they actually are dating, and rumors fly around that cause her to transfer to another school or something. It's honestly not explained very well. But I don't know, man. I couldn't be bothered to care the whole time. He's a really one-note character at the center of a one-note storyline that isn't particularly funny, insightful, emotional. Just, what do I get out of this? It almost doesn't even feel like the protagonist likes him that much. At the end of the Rank 5 event in Reload, he thinks to himself, I don't think Tomochika's ever gonna stop talking. Like, yeah, you said it. It's made even worse by the fact that the game forces you to start his link as the tutorial for social links in general. Really? Him? Way to make me resent him even more, game. I don't know, it's not consistently awful. There are some parts that are just bland, which is an improvement. And even though I'm not considering this for the ranking, his voiceover in Reload is pretty strong. But I'm sorry, I can't stand him, and it feels like he learns nothing by the end of it. I guess my favorite is rank 9, because that's when he gets hit with reality and he cries. I like seeing him upset. Moving on to something hopefully not shitty.
I don't like food, I love it.
Well, guess I gotta talk about Nozomi now. Maybe the most infamous and disliked social link in all of Persona. Though I don't quite consider him to be my least favorite, cause unfortunately, there is a good idea here buried underneath the worst, most bullshit execution imaginable. This borderline parody of Persona social links in general goes all over the place. From Nozomi eating a lot and nearly shitting himself multiple times, to him dedicating himself to an apocalyptic cult and scamming kids out of their money, to him resenting the fact that people liked his dead brother more than him. There's definitely something there with the brother stuff, and how he uses unhealthy outlets like eating too much and joining a cult to cope with this loss. I think rank 10, where he finally explains to you how everyone liked his brother better, isn't half bad. Definitely my favorite part of the link. But for God's sakes, this is rank 10! Why did we learn this information at the end of the link? We have to put up with his obnoxious, charmless, rude, unfunny shtick for the entire social link. This is like in Demon Slayer when they explain the villains' tragic backstories after they've already been defeated. It's like, who cares at this point? The minute you give this guy the slightest pushback and say, hey, maybe don't scam people, he gets so mad at you that the social link reverses. Only temporarily, mind you. It gets back to normal after you save him from some guys about to beat him up because he scammed one of their sons out of a lot of money. But it's like, I'm supposed to want to help him, right? I'm genuinely asking. I don't know the intent of this scene. Or character, really. I think you're supposed to feel bad for what a sad clown he's become, but it's just so hard to, even after you know what happened to him, because he's just consistently unpleasant throughout the whole thing. It's not like characters like Hidetoshi or Ai Ebihara, where they start improving as people towards the middle. Or Tanaka, where he's funny and charming enough to make up for his lack of development. You just get nothing out of talking to Nozomi. I mean, it was pretty funny when he moonwalked, but that's it. I do his social link solely because it's so bad, it's good to me. Why did they write it like that? Why is this story the way it is? A lot of people defend the inclusion of Nozomi's link by pointing out that having some bad, unlikable characters is a good way of letting you weed out who you want to spend your limited time with. Okay. Again though, you can have an unlikable character at the start who becomes sympathetic sooner than rank 10. But I definitely don't hate Nozomi's inclusion or anything. It's a little raw that he's here over all the much better FEMC exclusive links. But like I said, there's a so bad it's good charm to this one, I can't deny. A hard one to outright despise, but there's also no way in hell I'm ranking it any higher than this. Are you kidding me?
Have you ever had a dream that...
Much like Sai Nijima, Pharos is a link that progresses automatically, starts out as an ominous story check-in, before surprising you when a bond actually starts to form with the character and a social link starts, and it's kinda bullshit because it's not even 10 ranks. But Pharos does have a slight edge for a couple reasons. First, they jump around the entire time with the numbers. 1, 3, 5, 6, 8, 10. It feels a lot more deliberate, and even a little creepy compared to Sai just going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, that's it, the link's over. But ignoring the number scheme, this link does feel a little bit more intriguing than other story check-ins like Sai or Igor in P5. Even if you don't know who this creepy boy is, you start to get a little attached to him as he talks about how you're his only friend. I mean, it's not like amazing, but these check-ins with him do stick out in my mind a little bit. I definitely like rank 8 the best, where you get to open up to him about Shinji's death, and Pharos gets to express that he understands now why people mourn. I don't know, it's kinda nice for what it is. I can't really justify placing it any higher, but I don't actively dislike it. It may just be barely a social link, but these are integral scenes for setting up the character of Ryoji, so I can live with them, I guess. Moving on. Well, I did say about the Persona 5 links that I wouldn't hold any optional, questionable romances between an adult and a much younger student against the social link as a whole. I guess I gotta be consistent, huh? So, Ken's social link. It has its moments where they actually get into the tragedy of Ken's character and how much he misses his mother. And those are mostly pretty effective. I also really like rank 5, where he tells you he threw away all the issues of this violent manga he likes reading, because now he thinks it's bad to enjoy people dying, even bad guys. I don't know, that's an interesting personal struggle I've never seen a character have before. Rank 9, in the friendship route, is my favorite because I really like Ken's expression of how he has no ideas on what to do with his future. It lines up with the fact that he didn't expect to have a future, and it's pretty powerful to see him come to terms with the fact that he's gonna keep living. Ugh, this link has so many good moments in it. Why does half of it have to be taken up by his stupid little crush on you? Look, it's not uncommon for an elementary schooler to have a crush on someone much older than them, but like, that doesn't mean I enjoy seeing it. Nobody likes the Dipper and Windy stuff in Gravity Falls, and that's just a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old. The gap between Ken and FEMC is double that. So it just feels like a waste of time seeing him be all like, oh, you probably like Akihiko, right? Oh, do you have a boyfriend? It's like, nothing is gonna come out of this, dude. Why are you so fixated on this? It's not out of character for a child to act this way, but it's just annoying. We could have confined this to maybe like 1 rank and instead focused on Ken's grief and attempts to forge a future for himself more. The linked episodes he gets in Reload are so much better. Definitely my favorite content with the character in any game. So yep, that's Ken. A few glimpses of brilliance here and there, and an otherwise mediocre and annoying Link. What? I said my piece about the social link. What else do you want from me? Oh, that's right. Some of you might not know. I guess there probably are a lot of people who never played Portable and aren't aware of the asinine, incomprehensible, inexcusable facts that you have the option to date Ken? Look, I get it with the adult women. Maybe you're an adult and you prefer the option to go out with them instead of putting yourself in Joker's shoes and choosing someone age appropriate for him. There is a clear appeal to dating the adults in P5. Who the fuck is gonna pick the option to actively groom a little boy? Who is this for? It's horrible within the narrative and outside of it. I was honestly ready to put this Link in G tier next to Toad's Turnpike in the Wii U battle mode, but I figured I'd be charitable and judge the writing of the rest of the Link on its own merits. But make no mistake, Ken's romance route is actively my least favorite thing in the entire Persona series. And do you know what a feat that is? Cause this series is loaded with bullshit, let me tell ya. I'm so tired of seeing jokes about how Femsi is a pedophile. And like, it's not the fanbase's fault. They're not reading too much into this. This shit is actually in the game. Whatever, it's fine outside of that completely optional content, I guess. You control the buttons you press and all that. Anyway, I'm gonna go take a shower before we get to the next one.
Hamburger.
Okay, I think this might be my most cancelable take on any social link. I'm really sorry to say this, but I never liked Mitsuru's social link. I love her character. She's absolutely one of my favorite female party members in the whole series. But this link always just felt off to me for a couple of reasons. First of all, I know a ton of people really enjoy how inept she is when it comes to basic stuff like eating ramen and eating burger and going to movie. Yeah, I'll give you that. It's pretty cute. It's also quite frankly ridiculous, to the point where it becomes unbelievable. I would expect this kind of behavior from Aigis, who might have an excuse that she's just not programmed to know about this sort of stuff. But Mitsuru? Come on, even if she's never been out to eat at places like this before, she has to at least know how they work through cultural osmosis, right? She goes to a normal high school with normal kids. You don't think she's ever seen one of them eating a burger or takoyaki? She seriously doesn't know that you eat a burger with your hands? She saw a commercial for a burger one time and that's it? The more I think about it, the more it pisses me off. It really shouldn't, but I'm sorry, this just stretches my suspension of disbelief so much farther than practically any other social link in the series. I think rank 1 at the ramen shop was a good compromise. I could believe that she didn't understand the etiquette here or how to talk to the chef. That made sense for a sheltered rich girl. But not knowing basic information like how to hold a burger or what takoyaki is made out of? This is the girl we needed to max out our knowledge in order to interact with? Are you serious? Would you believe me if I said this isn't my biggest problem with the social link? Halfway through, Mitsuru starts talking about an arranged marriage she's being forced into in order to save her company after her father's passing. I'm just gonna set aside the fact that we have a better version of the storyline in Persona 5 now, and just focus on why it's flawed on its own merits. This issue feels entirely nebulous because we don't meet her fiance until rank 8. They do a pretty decent job of establishing how Mitsuru is trying to convince herself to go through with the marriage, talking about how her parents had an arranged marriage but then grew to love each other over time. Rank 6, where she muses over the nature of marriage and first tells you about her fiance, is probably my favorite in the link. But they really had to have this guy show up sooner than rank 8. His only scene in the entire link. Hell, the entire game. He doesn't even have a name. It would have been so much more satisfying if Mitsuru finally stood up to him after 2 or 3 links of putting up with his bullshit on screen. But instead, she tells him off right here with absolutely no build-up. It's a pretty good scene in a vacuum. I like what she calls him a Philistine. That's pretty funny. But it just does not feel earned in the slightest. And none of this marriage stuff really meshes with the comedic Mitsuru girl failure restaurant scenes. I guess there's a vague connection of her wanting to do all sorts of things on her bucket list before she gets tied down by marriage, but tonally, they just don't fit together all that well. I really hate to dog on this one so much, because I really do love Mitsuru as a character, and I especially love the idea of her social link portraying a different side of her that you would never expect based on how cool and confident she acts during the main story. But I'm sorry, I just don't think this was a really good way of going about it. I'm sure this link has its fans, and I'm happy about that. but man, it just doesn't work for me.
You suck at cooking, yeah, you totally suck.
Ooh, this might be my second spicy take in a row. Oh, geez. Or it might not be. I just generally don't know how people feel about this particular Link. But I gotta say, as much as I also like her character, I find Fuuka's social link to be unbearably dull and misguided. The vast majority of it is just her being nervous about cooking. Oh no, her cooking is bad. What will she do? Yeah, Persona girls being bad at cooking is kind of a trend in this series. And while it's not nearly as annoying as the hot spring scenes, it's still a pretty played out and repetitive one. And it all started here. It doesn't really have the comedic charm of Yukiko's hilariously awful skills in the kitchen, however. It's just a pretty flat and unengaging trait that Fuuka fixates on throughout most of this link. And then they try and tie it into her wider self-confidence issues and need to prove herself as a valuable member of C's. But the thing is, there's such an obviously better direction they could have gone with this social link that only briefly gets brushed on in a couple of these ranks. Fuuka talks about how she keeps her love of working with electronics under wraps, because it's not a traditionally girly hobby. And you know what? That's interesting! I would have loved to see her use this as a basis to overcome her general self-confidence problems and start becoming okay with being known as a girl who loves electronics tinkering. Hell, maybe she could find some friends who feel similarly and they could contribute to her self-confidence growing. That sounds really engaging. Too bad she only briefly brings this up in rank 4 and rank 10. She gives you a pair of custom headphones at the end and says she wanted you to see her electronic side instead of her cooking side. That's awesome! Could the rest of the storyline have been about that? Could she have gradually accepted over time that cooking wasn't her thing and then pivoted to being unashamed of her electronics hobby? It's unbelievable the amount of missed potential this link brings to the table. My favorite rank is 4 because it's a nice glimpse at what could have been the rest of the storyline. But unfortunately, most of this is just really dull, repetitive cooking conversations. Fuuka is charming enough, I suppose, but man is her storyline super bland. I did notice a cute detail the Persona 3 anime films did. In rank 7, Fuuka mentions an incident where she accidentally knocked a bunch of books over in a bookstore, and they actually incorporate that into the intro of the first Persona 3 movie. Cute! It doesn't really improve the social link, I just thought it was a nice little detail. Sorry Fuuka Nation, I like her, I swear. It's just because I like her that I wanted to see a storyline that fit her character and personality better. Oh, and I do feel compelled to briefly mention that the Femcy version of Fuuka's social link is wildly different for some reason. Instead of just hearing about and eating her cooking, you actually cook with her for every single link. You don't go anywhere besides the home ec room until the very end where you get to go to her room. Arguably, this one is even more boring, but at least it makes Fuuka's bad cooking way more funny. I don't know, they're about equal in my mind. I can't find it in me to rank this one separately. Whatever. Bebe is a character I generally see a lot of indifference or negativity towards in regards to his social link. And every time I'm like, why? I like Bebe. He's your silly French weeb friend. I find him pretty endearing. I expected to rank him a decent bit higher than a lot of other people do. And then I remembered, oh yeah, this isn't about the character. This is about the quality of the social link. Yeah, this is not that good. Bebe loves sewing and living in Japan. But then one day he finds out his aunt died, and she was the whole reason he got to come here. Now his evil uncle wants to bring him back to France. Ew, cringe. What can Bebe do to convince his uncle that he's found a wonderful new home and that he has nothing left in his native land to return to? This is all established in ranks 4 and 5, so you know there's potential for an interesting and tragic familial conflict to take center stage throughout the rest of the link.
I will show him a kimono.
Oh. Never mind, actually. Bebe decides he will solve this conflict by making a really good kimono that will convince his uncle how much he should stay in Japan. And that's it. That's what the entire second half of the social link is about. We never even meet the uncle. Bebe just sews a kimono. This is really boring. I mean, I enjoy spending time with him and all that, but man, is the second half of the storyline entirely unengaging. I guess rank 4 is my favorite part, since we get a solid picture of Bebe's grief. But yeah, I don't know, man. This one's kind of lame. I think at the very least, it's worth mentioning that this one is vastly improved by Reload having voice acting in a unique way the other social links aren't. Basically, in the original, they really had to convey how French this guy was without you hearing his French accent. So they just typed out everything he said in slightly broken English in order to convey that his French accent was coming through as he was speaking Japanese. Are you following me so far?
No.
I assume for a lot of people, this made his social link feel a little gimmicky, and it was hard for them to get wrapped up in the story that much because of how weird a lot of his text boxes were. In Reload, with the benefits of voice acting that includes a really good French accent, the French quota is covered and the text boxes can just be read normally, which is a huge benefit because now that that original gimmick is out of the way, we could definitively say that this storyline is in fact mid. Sorry, Bebe, I genuinely really like you. You'll always be my Tamagotchi. But man, could we have done anything else to convince your uncle? Literally anything at all? Well, Portable did say they were giving all the male party members social links. They never said they were stopping at the humans. What if Dog had a social link? Sure, why not? It's a hell of a lot better than the fox from Persona 4, considering you actually spend time with this animal. But yeah, I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a little bit boring. I feel like more than any other Portable exclusive link, this one dramatically suffers from being in a visual novel instead of a fully 3D RPG. I would get a much better sense of Koromaru's character throughout these sequences if I could actually see his animations instead of just reading about them. They definitely did their best with what they could though. And I like the characterization here, how we discover he's not just a pet, but rather his own entity still reeling from the loss of his master. It's nice that we never need Aigis to translate anything for us throughout the link. I feel like that would have just been a cop-out, and it's better to interpret what Koromaru means without directly being told. Even so, this link is a little all over the place, and there's definitely a couple of dry spots, like when you have to help your samurai teacher find his samurai USB stick using Koromaru's nose. I don't know what that added. I also think it would be nice to see what Koromaru means to some of the other members of SEES, rather than having Fuka be the only one present. I don't know, if he can't talk, it might be nice to have another character who cares deeply about him to play off of. Overall, I think my favorite rank is 7 when he brings some meat to a lost puppy. Like, that's unbearably adorable, and it's nice to get this puppy back to its home. Kind of a mixed bag with some decent moments sprinkled in here and there. But yeah, it probably could have been stronger in anything but Portable. I definitely prefer the new linked episodes with him in Reload. They even adapt the Lost Dog subplot, which is pretty nice.
Dear, I'm terribly sorry about all this.
I'm gonna be real, you guys. There is not a single social link in the entire Persona series that feels more like a straight up dating sim than Ryoji's. Ooh, he rejects all the other girls at school and he takes your hand, calling you his princess. Ooh, he says he'd like you whether you were a guy or a girl. What a bi king. Ooh, you're on a date at the riverbank. How cute. Ooh, he's wearing a ring and he gives it to you at the end. Oh man, is it getting hot in here? Honestly though, aside from the visceral thrill of dating this popular pretty boy, I don't really think this is all that substantial of a social link. I like Ryoji's character a lot despite his limited screen time, and you'd think giving him a social link would present an opportunity to expand on him more. But I don't really think it does. There's a bit more foreshadowing of how he feels like he knows you in your room, since, you know, he was inside you, and it is nice to see more of his romantic side, but it nonetheless feels a little unsubstantial and like it isn't really adding a whole lot. Rank 10 is probably my favorite part, and it's really just a simple add-on to the scene already in the game where you decide not to kill him. Now he gives you his ring and says he loves you, and it's really tragic and well done. The thing I always appreciated about Ryoji's character is how much he genuinely cares about you, your friends, and being alive. He absolutely resents his role as the avatar of Nyx, and romancing him really helps drive home just how upsetting it is that he won't get to enjoy life any longer. I mean, neither will you, I guess, but shh, that comes later. Overall, I definitely don't have a bad time with this social link, and I do really like the character involved. I can't stress that enough. I just don't think anything about it really sticks out that much to me.
A good detective never makes assumptions, but he has to treat his instincts as facts.
Oh boy, it's time to talk about the social link of Junpei Iori, Ace Detective. Ace Detective? More like stupe, ace defect. That does not sound like the real line anymore, does it? I was never a massive fan of early game Junpei on account of him being creepy as shit towards the girls. I mean, they definitely toned him down in Reload, which made me appreciate his character a lot more. And even in the original, I do acknowledge and respect the development he goes through as the story progresses. He's definitely not a bad character, but he's never been one of my favorites because of the sour impression he leaves at the beginning of the story. And I was not looking forward to seeing how he acted in a social link that you can only play from the perspective of girl. Oh brother, here comes the creepiness, and oh, actually he's really chill and friendly. In fact, he even feels the need to defend you from other creepy guys who took pictures of you in gym class. Yeah, he's pretty respectable and nice to be around in this FemC exclusive social link. Who knew? I mean, we all know eventually Junpei reveals himself to have a heart of gold, but it's nice to see him be normal around a woman so early on in the story. Overall, it's a pretty solid link, if a bit unfocused. The main storyline of him trying to figure out who took pictures of you only kicks in 2 ranks towards the middle, and then it's resolved off screen. I really enjoy rank 6 where you interrogate some of the other social link characters, and initially you think it's Kenji until you remember, oh yeah, he only likes older women. That honestly made me laugh out loud. It's way funnier than anything in Kenji's actual link. This plotline is decent, even if it's not focused on throughout the link too much. A lot of the first half is just chill hangouts with Junpei, plus him opening up to you about his awful dad. And then in the second half, we get a lot of solid self-reflection from him about his attitude and his place in the world. I don't know if it was necessarily built up to all that well by the rest of the link, but it's still a nice side of his character to see, and the introspection he offers in rank 9 probably makes it my favorite in the link. I also really gotta give this one credit for not having an option to romance him at all. Obviously, this is probably done to maintain his love for Chidori in the main storyline, so I'm glad they didn't undermine it with an optional side romance, considering they very well could've. Lord knows they don't stop the protagonist from dating multiple characters, but instead, Junpei doesn't pursue you romantically. And I think that's nice that you end up just being a girl he respects as an equal, or more accurately, one he looks up to. Not a super memorable or incredible link, but still a pretty good one.
Hello everybody, my name is Markiplier.
I was so ready to rank Tanaka really low going into this, cause like, his social link story is not a story. He doesn't come out of it a better person by the end in the slightest. He's kind of evil, honestly. And the entire social link is just hearing his evil, completely self-centered musings about the business world and how gullible people are. It also almost reads like a parody of Persona social links in general. But why does this social link with a horrible person work, while the Gourmet King doesn't? It's quite simple, honestly. This is the funniest social link in the Persona series. I laughed out loud multiple times at the sheer callousness of the things that came out of this despicable lunatic's mouth. He tells you about this one guy who works for him who couldn't meet a sales quota, so Tanaka docked his pay. You say you feel bad for the guy, and how does this fucker respond? What are you talking about? You should feel sorry for me. Classic Tanaka. Oh, he loves class reunions. That's sweet. I wonder what the reason could be. Oh, it's because he loves rubbing in everyone's face how pathetic their lives turned out compared to his. What a scam. By the end, he decides to make a charitable donation and help out a bunch of kids. Aww, is it because he learned something and grew as a person? No! It's because when they become rich and successful, then he can swoop in, take complete credit for getting them there, and have them take care of him in his old age. And rather than give you credit for inspiring him to consider this, he instead commends himself for taking note of this. What a marvelously perfect asshole this guy is. My favorite part is rank 8, where he talks about a guy who got inspired by him to become a prosecutor in order to bring shady businessmen like him to justice. Like, how horrible do you have to be to affect someone's life like that? Incredible. There's honestly no reason the social link should work as well as it does. Like, if you said this was one of your least favorites in the series, I would completely get it. But oh my god, he's just so funny. What can I say? It really helps that he's one of only 2 social links you can do at night, so there's no reason whatsoever not to complete the link. But even so, he's definitely one of the most memorable in the game, for sure. Even if I don't think I can rank him among the best. I hope they keep bringing Tanaka back for cameos in the Persona series until the end of time.
My name is Rio.
Rio is one of the unique characters invented for the FemC route social links in Persona 3 Portable, and her story is pretty good. But man, I sure wish it had a sequel. I have no doubt the social link for Rio 2 would be even better. Okay, in all seriousness, it's fairly standard of a conflict. Basically, she's the only one taking volleyball seriously on her team, and this causes a bit of a rift with her teammates who prefer to slack off and talk about boys. But it turns out Rio secretly has a bit of a boy crush of her own on Kenji, of all characters. Yeah, they were childhood friends or whatever, but holy shit, Kenji? The guy whose entire personality is he's in love with his teacher? Even Yuko is just dumbfounded upon hearing this, and why shouldn't she be? I don't know, I'm not going to judge the social link's quality just because of Rio's questionable taste in men, but I think it's pretty solid of a storyline. There's a lot of relatability to be found in having a crush on one of your friends, but being too nervous to confess for fear of messing up your current dynamic. And it's cute how you and all the other girls try and eavesdrop on her confession scene, where Kenji says, "I love you as much as I love ramen." And once again, Yuko gives the greatest reaction of all time. Man, Yuko's great. I wish she had a social link or something. It's kind of funny though, because she's not even on the team, but she still shows up for large parts of this link, mainly as a way to offset the fact that none of Rio's other teammates have character portraits. And because this is portable, they don't have in-game sprites either. We just have to imagine all of them in our head, like we're reading a damn book. Like, hello, this is a visual novel, not a regular novel. What gives? This is probably the main weakness of the link, just the fact that it features so many characters that only exist off-screen, making it a little hard to orient yourself in the scene or picture who's talking, especially since the other girls don't even have names. But overall, it's a pretty simple and sweet story. Nothing extremely compelling, but just fun and relatable enough to keep my attention the whole way through. My favorite part is rank 7 when Rio makes up with the other girls and also confesses who she has a crush on. Their reactions are pretty fun. Not an amazing link, but a pretty good one.
This looks like a job for the hall monitor!
Hidetoshi is a pretty well-liked social link from what I've seen. I don't know how generally popular he is with the fan base, but I know he has a lot of vocal people who think he's one of the best in all of Persona 3. I think he's good. Honestly, he's one of the few I skipped on my playthrough of Reload, just because I prefer spending my time with people who aren't obnoxious and antagonistic. But that's not a valid reason to dismiss this link, because it's about him growing past those traits. He's a disciplinary member of the student council, and he fixates on trying to find the culprit who left a cigarette in the boys' bathroom. Really, no other members of the student council care about this, but he needs to catch this delinquent. Partially because he's a narc, I guess. But also to get a teacher's endorsement to eventually take over the student council. It's obviously a little annoying seeing him act like this and having to suck up to him with your answers in order to get the most music notes. But ultimately, this is all to give him a chance to grow as a person and decide not to put you on the list of potential suspects because he values your friendship over furthering his student council career. The stuff in the latter half with him getting a reality check and realizing he was too power hungry is really good. And rank 9 is my favorite part because I love the self-reflection Hidetoshi expresses here, as well as how he tells you not to repeat this to anybody, since they'll all probably make fun of him for going so uncharacteristically soft. It's good, but I think the main thing holding this one back a little for me is that I never get the sense you and Hidetoshi are bonding. I mean, all the pieces are there. He even tells you a personal story about what happened to his dad that makes him want to see justice in the world as much as possible. But he still comes off as cold and distant as he does it. It feels less like your presence is changing his mindset on things, and more like you're his stooge that he can explain his morally superior actions to. As a result, I don't know if I buy it when he says you saved him from becoming a tyrant. I don't know, for a lot of it, it just doesn't feel like we're leaving an impact. Regardless, I do think that it's a very good character arc for Hidetoshi, and I like where he ends up at the end. I absolutely see the appeal of this one, even if it's not among my favorites.
I dropped out in the 4th grade to run drugs to support my nana.
Do you guys think Mamoru actually did 100 laps around the city like he said he would? Or was he just exaggerating? Vote on your phones now. Anyway, yeah, this is a pretty good link, though it has splashes of excellence that I wish we got to see more of if it was paced a little better. Mamoru Hayase is your chill track rival from another school who you strike up a bond with, and eventually you find out that his dad died, and he and his mom are working extremely hard to take care of all his siblings. Then in rank 6, the mom gets hospitalized from overworking, meaning Mamoru doesn't actually show up to his own social link episode because he needs to take care of her. Instead, he just talks to you over the phone. I think that's the only time that happens in the series, and it's a great way of using your expectations of a social link occurrence to really drive home that, oh, he's really busy and in trouble right now. Rank 7 is my favorite though. That's when he really comes clean about how dire his family's financial situation is, and how tough it is having to be the sole breadwinner of the family now. That's excellent stuff, one of my favorite ranks in the game, and I'm sure it's a relatable situation for a ton of players. The thing is, I really wish the rest of the link maintained this level of tragedy and stress for Mamoru throughout. Like with Kawakami for instance, you feel her agony the entire time. It pervades the entire link until you solve her problem. With Mamoru, it makes sense for him to keep it under wraps during the first few ranks, but it still feels like it takes a while for this link to really get going. And after rank 7, he kinda gets back on his feet pretty quickly. There was definitely a lot of potential for this to be one of the absolute best links in the game. For me, it wasn't quite as consistently strong as its best parts though, but it's still a really good one. I'm impressed they managed to justify having 2 trackmates as social links in this game, because both of them have pretty unique and compelling stories. I just like the other one a little better, and we'll get to him pretty soon. Alright, let's take a break and get to the sponsor transition. Which, if you've seen the Mario Kart song and James Cameron rankings, you'll know that this video is a part of the Schaff Sandwich 6, baby! The ongoing story arc where I make a damn sandwich. It's so exciting! Remember, manga readers, no spoiling what happens next for the anime onlys. Speaking of anime, last time I accidentally ended up in Japan while acquiring iceberg lettuce on the Titanic with the help of the Terminator. So anyway, here I am in Weeb World, and I could sure use some ketchup. Hey, did you say you wanted ketchup? Holy crap, Lois! It's Shinjiro from Persona 3! Yeah, I'm selling all the illegal goods here in this dark alley, including ketchup. But business has been kinda slow lately. Damn, I'm sorry to hear that, Shinjiro Persona 3. But you know, now that you mention it, I think you really need to ask yourself life's greatest question. What's the best way to sell things to people? I don't know, man. What is it? By building a website with Squarespace, the sponsor of today's video. Squarespace is an amazing online website builder that enables you to create beautiful websites for your business or personal hobby. You can utilize their new design intelligence features to build an amazing, more personalized website tailored to your unique needs, allowing you to create your own digital identity you can use across your entire online presence. Squarespace makes it easy to sell all sorts of things like online courses, blogs, videos, and memberships. Put your content behind a paywall to get recurring revenue. Simply set the price and choose whether to charge a one-time fee or subscription for access. Plus, you can easily manage all your payments in one place with Squarespace Payments. It's super quick and easy. You can get started in just a few clicks and start receiving payments right away. Your customers can use tons of popular payment methods like Klarna, ACH Direct Debit in the US, Apple Pay, Afterpay in the US and Canada, and ClearPay in the UK. Check out squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/jfrillis to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Well, there you go, Shinji. You now know the answer to life's greatest question. Oh, I guess he got shot while I was doing the sponsor bit. Oops. Hey, what's all that red stuff flowing out of his coat? Of course! Ketchup! Well, guess I'll scoop it up with this convenient empty bottle I found lying around. Alright, ketchup acquired. Thanks, Shinji. I know you're dead, but here's $1.50 for your troubles. Now, I'm probably gonna review Wicked and Moana 2, but just know that those videos are not part of the Schaff Sandwich 6. They're more so one-shots, whereas the next ranking video will actually be part of the ongoing story. It's gonna be the Disney Villains ranking video, which, I haven't figured out what ingredient I'm gonna get from them yet. There's just a lot of options. I'll think about it. See you guys then. And for now, back to the ranking.
And I am the monk.
Mutatsu is a pretty interesting link, because despite the fact that it's confined to one location and not much really happens story-wise until the end, it's just kind of captivating. I don't know why, but the vibes of this one, going to the club at night and letting this sad old monk vent to you, there's really nothing else like it in the series. Some of the ranks are a little rambly and don't really amount to much, but that just suits this character so well. A weird, incoherent drunk who every now and again spouts off a nice kernel of wisdom. I really like being there to hear him express his remorse at how he lived his life. Really, that's your only contribution to this link, just being there as a person for him to vent to. But sometimes, that's all someone needs. Just having you there to listen to his woes is what ultimately inspires him not only to open up to you about his estranged wife and son, but consciously make the effort to reconnect with them. Rank 8 is a pretty heartfelt one where he drunkenly mistakes you for his son, and then after he realizes it's you, finally comes clean about how they're not in his life anymore. It was a solid contender for my favorite in the link, but I think this one just ends on the perfect note with rank 10. This is where we get to see his resolve to apologize and reconnect with them in action. As the detective he hired to find them reports back about the new life they have. There's something so simultaneously melancholy and beautiful about hearing that Mutatsu is a grandfather now. It's like, that's a really sweet discovery, but also it's such a shame that he's so disconnected from his son that he didn't know about it until now. This is how you can tell Persona 3 was written before the advent of social media. But yeah, it's a simultaneously sweet and sad moment. And Mutatsu's plan to say, I want to recite the sutras with you by my side for the rest of my life when he sees his wife again? I don't know, man, that got me a little misty-eyed. It just feels incredible to give this bitter, jaded old man another lease on life. All because you chose to listen to his problems and be there for him as a result. The fact that he says he was waiting to see you one last time before finding his family again, that's just really special to me. I would really love to rank this one higher, but in my opinion, it's just kinda good for a while until those incredible last 3 ranks. Still, that definitely makes for an above average link at the end of the day. He's just a fun guy to vibe with. And considering your lack of interesting things to do at night in this game, I always look forward to meeting up with the sad monk guy. He's pretty great.
She's the most bewitching, bespectacled beauty I've ever beheld.
You know, I wrote Chihiro's entire segment using a speech-to-text app because it's easier than typing, but then I forgot to copy the text into the document and it got lost forever, so I had to redo it. This has never happened to me before, guys, and for such a sweet character too. Aww, sorry Chihiro. Come to think of it, this is just like how the teacher misplaced the money that got her in trouble during the link. Man, she just can't catch a break. Okay, let me just try and remember everything I wrote about her and just write it all again. I love her character. She's really nice and cute and all that good stuff. And it just feels good to help her get over her general shyness and her fear of men that stems from her abusive dad. I think my main issue with this link is that the storyline about her getting accused of stealing money doesn't kick in until rank 7, which feels a little late. I'm glad we have time to breathe and just get to know her for a bit, but they probably could have gotten this storyline started by rank 5 or 6. And I like ranks 5 and 6, especially 5 where she pulls the whole, oh, my friend has a crush on someone card. Like, you're not fooling anyone, girl. Nonetheless, they contribute to a bit of weird pacing issues. But on the other hand, you could argue that the situation with the teacher misplacing the money should have been cleared up immediately. Like, why didn't anyone think to ask him what happened to the money after Chihiro said she gave it to him? I also think it's a bit contrived that Mitsuru says you and her need to sort this out in her room without Chihiro's involvement. I don't know, it's kind of just an excuse to give her that moment of jealousy and bravery that she needs to finally confront the teacher. Despite the awkward setup, it's a great and climactic moment for her character, and it makes rank 9 my favorite in the link. Yeah, you could say Chihiro's intense jealousy of the other girls who live in your dorm is a bit of a character flaw, but it's an endearing one, and it makes sense for a character so generally nervous and insecure. She's really sweet. I almost dated Yuko on my reload playthrough, but nah man, I just couldn't say no to Chihiro. One of my favorite characters in Persona 3. I definitely see quite a couple of flaws in her social link, preventing her from ranking higher. But damn it, it's still a good one, and she's a great character. I also love her cameo in Persona 4. That was so sweet of them to include. I first played 4 before 3, so I didn't know her, but I could just tell this was a cameo from the way she introduced herself, and just the fact that she had a portrait in general. There's this Letterboxd review of Tick Tick Boom that goes, as someone who is not a musical theater fan, I did not recognize most of the cameos, but as a cameo fan, I sure could tell they were happening. Me when Chihiro in Persona 4.
Well, get out of my bookstore!
Boon Kichi and Mitsuko are just the sweetest. I absolutely love spending time with them whenever I can. Seeing how excited they always are to see you, hearing Bunkichi's love of bad puns. It's like you get a pair of grandparents you can drop in on anytime, other than Monday for some reason. I have to admit, my fond feelings for these characters probably overshadow the fact that their story isn't the greatest. I mean, it's a great setup. Their son died, the persimmon tree at your high school was planted in memory of him since he was a teacher there, and now these two are upset that the tree is gonna get taken down. You constantly hear about a petition made by his students to save the tree, and then eventually the two of them tell the school to go ahead and chop it down because a new school building will be built in its place, and they don't want to deprive the youth of new learning opportunities because of just maintaining their old memories. It's good, but there are two clear issues with the storyline as is. One, this revelation about the new school building doesn't happen until the end of the social link, and it just seems weird that these two, or the people making the petition, wouldn't have found out sooner that this is the reason the tree was getting chopped down. Like, it just seems like really poor communication on the school's part to not tell them this was the reason, to the point where it seems a little unrealistic. And second, you don't exactly have much of an impact on this storyline. You're just here to observe Bunkichi and Mitsuko's reactions to it. Now, a lot of social links just have you be a shoulder to vent on, but it really feels like you don't even affect their decision to write a letter telling the school to chop down the tree. They do it, and then they explicitly don't tell you about it in order to surprise you. It just feels like you don't have a ton of impact on what's going on here. But these aren't major problems. This is still a good and heartwarming story. I like rank 10 the best, where they accept it's best for the tree to come down, and the epilogue in March is really sweet as well. It is kind of another case of why didn't they think of suggesting the school move the tree somewhere else sooner? Like, there are just a lot of elements of this conflict that feel easily resolvable. But damn it, it warms my heart, so who cares? I love these characters, and their story isn't bad despite its flaws.
My leg!
Kazushi Miyamoto is the subject of a pretty simple yet solid storyline. He's in track, or swimming or kendo if you're playing the original versions of Persona 3. Yeah, you actually get to choose which sport this storyline takes place in without it affecting the overall outcome. But in Reload, you're stuck with track. Not a huge deal. I know they only took out the other sports because it would be a pain to do all that extra voice acting. But man, I liked it when Kaz was a swimmer, I don't know. Regardless, let's just assume track is back for the purposes of this social link. Pretty early on, you find out that his leg is injured, but he doesn't let anyone else know about it except you. This especially does a great job of making you feel more connected to him than a lot of other social links do. Having you be the bearer of his secret really gets across the idea that he values you and cares a lot about you, and vice versa. Eventually, he reveals that he's pushing himself so hard because he promised his nephew he would become #1 in Japan, in order to get the nephew to go to rehab for his own busted legs. It's a sweet motivation, if a bit of an unreasonable one. I mean, the nephew is 5. I'm sure you could make some other sort of deal with him to get him to do rehab. Give him a lollipop, I don't know. In the end, Kaz does admit that it was all about his pride, and after an intervention from the rest of the team, which happens in my favorite part of the link, rank 8, he ultimately decides that he should go through his surgery rather than permanently impair his ability to walk. It's a good arc, and I can definitely understand and relate to the desire to work through pain for the sake of short-term results, rather than giving your body the attention and time off it needs. Dude, my shoulders were killing me when I finished cutting down all the entries for the Mario Sunshine collab. But damn it, I wanted that video out so bad, so I worked through the pain. Not a great idea. Honestly, my biggest issue with this social link has less to do with Miyamoto-san himself, and more to do with you, the protag. You're just so passive throughout this whole thing, mindlessly keeping a secret instead of acting as a voice of reason, considering he ultimately does decide to do surgery at the end. I would have liked to help him come to that conclusion as his friend. But when you do have the option to say that, you don't get nearly as many music notes as encouraging him to do the wrong thing. It's not really that major of an issue, just something that mildly annoyed me. Overall, this is a good, strong link. Not anything too crazy, but solidly compelling and a bit emotional. Just let my boy swim next time, Atlas.
I've been waiting for this.
I'm gonna be real with you guys. I don't know if there's a single other social link that feels the second most like a dating sim than Akihiko's. I mean, I'm not complaining or anything. I feel like that was in pretty popular demand for a lot of the fan base. And while the story is fairly loose here, I think there's enough touching moments and compelling reflections on how much Aki strives to keep going in spite of it all to make this one land as a really great addition to Portable. Like, yeah, it is a little corny how dating sim-esque it is. Ooh, all the other girls are jealous of you. Ooh, he's jealous because he thinks you're going out with Junpei. Aw, isn't that funny that he doesn't get how girls like him? LMAO. OMG, he's taking you to a sweet shop because he knows girls like sweet things, so he wants to get you a sweet thing. The social link really does a good job of painting him as an adorable buffoon in the most endearing way possible. And yeah, f it, I liked it. I'm not made of stone. As time goes on, he starts to open up about his sister, Miki, who doesn't come up a lot in the main story, so it's nice to hear about how much pain he holds as a result of her death. Rank 8 is a pretty strong reflection of this, but damn it, rank 9 has gotta be my favorite. Aki choosing to open up his heart and get close to you, despite his fear of loss, is so powerful, especially when you know the damn ending of the game. And like, considering how romance-centric this entire link is, obviously the confession scene should deliver the goods in terms of being a satisfying and memorable moment for the character. And boy, does it ever. I really like this link. It's great to see a softer and more flustered side of such a cool and iconic character.
I study cardiology, but I don't know the matters of the heart.
Oh wow, a white guy with brown hair and glasses. Gee, you know who that reminds me of? Terry Lessler, the friendly vegan from the Scott the Wise series of videos. Seriously, back when me, Patrick, and the gang dubbed all the Persona games on Chris's channel, we pretended this guy was Terry Lessler instead of latching on to the far more obvious joke the rest of the internet would make a couple years later. That's how you know we're the real series as a whole enjoyers. Anyway, you're probably wondering why in the fucking heck I have Keisuke ranked so high, when I commonly see the sentiment that he's boring in the fandom. Guys, what social link were you playing? I, for one, was really invested in the pretty simple but immensely effective conflict of him choosing to pursue his passion of art or becoming a doctor and taking over the family hospital. I personally think it does the whole not wanting to be forced to follow in your parents' footsteps plotline a whole lot better than Yukiko's link did. It's just a hell of a lot more focused, and you get a better sense of this kid's anguish throughout. He genuinely feels torn straight in half between his love of art and his desire to save people's lives. And when his dad switches up on him and pressures him to pursue art instead, it allows him to get a cleaner perspective on doctorhood and realize he genuinely does want to do it. The link constantly jerks me back and forth, completely unsure how it would ultimately turn out, which is more than I could say about Yukiko and Risei's links, where it's kinda obvious what they're both gonna decide in the end. Here, I legitimately felt like Keisuke could have landed on either art or medicine in the end. And they both would have been a fitting conclusion for his character, because his passion for both shines through incredibly well. Rank 5 is my favorite because of how passionately he's emboldened by being guaranteed an art award, expressing his desire to stick it in his dad's face, before being conflicted by an offer to study abroad that gets cut short by a sick kid that needs his attention. It's like, so much is going on at once for this guy, and it's a bit overwhelming seeing him navigate it all. Though, I do have to dock a few points for rank 9. For a pretty realistic conflict, this rank is borderline comical and absurd. Keisuke is just about to run away and find himself before committing to a path in life. But then this lady starts coughing really bad and he has the need to help her. Okay, that's a fine enough way to get him back on the doctor mindset, sure. But before you can even catch your breath, another guy suddenly has a heart attack and the dramatic music kicks in and it's like, okay, come on guys. What are the odds 2 medical emergencies would happen back to back like this? The link was already kind of pushing it with all the medical issues Keisuke has to take care of at school. Like, I've been to high school and medical emergencies don't happen this frequently. But at least they were spread out between the ranks enough to be believable. This, however, is certifiably insane. It doesn't feel like a natural occurrence for the storyline. It feels like the writer's really drilling it into Keisuke's head that he needs to be a doctor. Despite this issue, I think overall, this is one of the more underrated links in the series. I found myself engaged by it the entire time. And not only was the link really good, but just thinking about the implications the protagonist's death would have on Keisuke makes me so sad. Keisuke literally says in rank 10 that if I keep you alive, we get to spend more time together. And he notices on March 4th that you don't look too well. Genuinely, do you think he'd be able to live with himself for not looking into your illness more? I never thought about this until I started writing about this link, but given how much he talks about saving lives throughout the story, I feel like he might regret not helping you for the rest of his life. Not a bad bit of fridge horror for the neglected, funny Scott the Woz artist, huh? Oh yeah, and I almost forgot, much like Kaz, before Reload, you had the option for this link to take place in a music or photography class. That's gone now. They threw it in the dumpster next to Femc. Thanks, Atlas.
If Mama was married.
Yukari's social link is pretty straightforward and uneventful, but in a good way. Rather than tell one cohesive story that progresses over the course of these 10 ranks, it's more so just you hanging out with her and exploring her issues with opening up to and relying to others in a variety of scenarios. You save her from a bunch of guys who stole her wallet, and after she thanks you, she's like, you know I could have handled that myself. But then by the next rank, she apologizes for being a little hostile there, and it's pretty sweet. Essentially, it gets laid out for you over the course of the link that her rocky relationship with her mother is the source of her standoffish and somewhat rude demeanor. She only talks to her mom on the phone in 2 of the ranks, but this strange relationship casts a shadow over the entire link. Yukari is fully aware that this is where her coldness comes from, and resolves to be better as she spends more and more time with you, and starts opening up to you more. I also really love the idea of a Persona character having a living parent, but just wanting nothing to do with them because they're awful. It's an interesting dynamic that you don't see too often because most of your party members' parents in these games are either dead or irrelevant. It's a nice change of pace to get one who's just kind of a deadbeat. It makes you sympathize with Yukari and explains why she is the way she is. My personal favorite part is rank 8, which starts with Yukari getting one of those calls from her mother, except it's actually an apologetic one, trying to make amends for the mom getting remarried without consulting with Yukari at all. One change I really appreciate is that in the original, the mom is the one to suggest meeting up in person for the first time in 10 years to talk about this. But in Reload, it's Yukari who actually makes that step, which is a really sweet thing to see as a response to the mom apologizing. After that, Yukari confides in you how much she's worried about saying something cruel to her mom. Again, a potent reflection of how much she knows she can be rude and wants to be better. She then comes to the understanding that the loss of her dad is probably what deeply scarred and changed her mom. And then she notes that losing someone you love and having to go on alone is really hard. Oh man, the fact that it's Yukari saying that, given what happens at the end of the game and in the answer. Oh, that hurts. It's a nice priming for later developments with her character, and it's just a sweet, heartfelt scene in the moment as well. Overall, I don't know if I can really rank this one too much higher because it doesn't flow that well as a story, but I think it really does a great job of exploring Yukari's character in ways you might not get out of the main story. Pretty great for what it is, but not quite peak.
We got a #1 victory royale.
Whoa, guys, it's Persona 2! There it is, they referenced it! It's a thing, it's a game that exists, they remembered! Okay, that's enough Persona 2 references forever, I think. I have to admit, despite the, weird thing that happens in rank 8, I'm honestly a huge fan of the Maya social link. Some people will call it cringe because of all the leet speak employed by this mysterious MMO player you befriend, but I think that's precisely what's so endearing about it. Yeah, it would be cringe to find online nowadays, but for an out-of-touch 20-something to be talking like this in 2009 when this game takes place, yeah, it fits right in and makes for a fun little time capsule. I don't know, man. I just always get excited to play this link in the same way you get excited to unwind with some video games over the weekend. The vibes are immaculate. It's nice, relaxed, and super fun hearing Maya vent about her job and shitty coworkers. I mean, come on, how is this any different from venting to your friends in Discord servers? Ever since the birth of the internet as we know it, I feel like this has been a very relatable situation. I love how as Maya gets more and more comfortable, her rants get more and more petty. Like how she insists another teacher at her school has fake tits. It's just an incredibly funny link, and a really refreshing change of pace compared to the other ones in the series. They never attempted an online-only social link again, probably because they got it so right the first time. For the most part. I guess I better bring up rank 8, where she talks about the fact that she has a crush on you, her student. Keep in mind, she doesn't know that that student is the same person as the MMO partner she's currently venting to about her crush. Yeah, it's very weird, but it doesn't really bother me as much as the other links where you get groomed, because, well, nothing really comes of it. She lets her dark secret out to you on the web, but she never acts weird to you in real life. Oddly enough, I think her crush on you kinda suits the storyline in terms of just expressing what a mess of a person she currently is. It falls in line with her pettiness, sloppiness, and every other character flaw she reveals to you throughout the link. Whereas with someone like Sayoko or Kawakami, it really clashes with the main point of those social links. I think this is easily the least egregious student-teacher relationship tease the series has ever done. Man, I hate the fact that there are other ones we can compare it to. Also, don't get it twisted. I would absolutely prefer if she wasn't interested in grooming you. The social link does not need that, and it is the biggest flaw with it. I just don't think it's as big of a flaw with the overall package as a lot of people make it out to be. Ultimately, rank 10 is my favorite part of the link since Maya reflects on all the bitching she's been doing and decides to finally log off and start working on herself IRL. And the endgame event with her is also just so good. The sheer embarrassment she expresses is hilarious. It's cool and surreal mentally reconciling her IRL self with the raunchy gamer you spent your Sundays with. And damn it, it actually warms my heart a little bit to see her say she was able to turn her life around thanks to me. Even her attempting to ask you out to dinner and then chickening out. Like, I don't know, that's pretty endearing, even if she absolutely should not have attempted it. Despite the one weird thing about it, this is definitely one of my favorites in Persona 3. And it's not even the best social link in this game that's exclusive to Sundays.
Come on, Gary, it's a race! Have you heard of them?
Attention, come and get your I was a fan of Yuko before reload badge. I've always loved this character and her storyline. It's so simple and understated compared to nearly every other social link character who has some big problem to deal with. Yuko just feels way more grounded and pretty realistic, in the sense that she just kinda doesn't know what to do with her life. That's it. It's not some drastic situation or anything, she's just a little aimless, not excelling at school, and not really having any idea of what she wants to do afterwards. Then an opportunity arises to help coach these kids so they can beat the 6th graders in a race and get the right to use their playground again. Seriously, it's so low stakes, but that's why it's so enjoyable. You really care about the bond Yuko is forming with these kids, and you can see her gradually become passionate about something for what seems like the first time. And it's not in your face about it either. Like at one point, Yuko just casually mentions that in order to put together this routine, she used the school library for the first time. It's just an offhand remark that isn't treated with any significance, but it really sticks out to me because it's the first time Yuko ever has a desire to utilize this massive database of knowledge at her disposal for anything. Before, she didn't really care about her studies or anything else enough to ever go to the library. So the fact that she did now is a great way of showing how passionate she's become about something. And this all naturally leads into her deciding to become an athletic trainer and forming a rigorous plan to make that happen. She definitely got a lot of help and inspiration from you, but it's her own latent determination that she finally awakened in herself that led her to this satisfying conclusion. It's just such a sweet, endearing story about someone finding their place in the world. Nothing mind-blowing or anything, but just so well executed. Oh, and I know the girls getting flustered by you is a common enjoyable thing in these social links, but her especially is just so cute. My favorite rank is 8, where you get invited to her room before you even have the option to date her, and she's just super nervous and starts talking about having kids. Oh my god, it's so endearing. I adore Yuko. Okay, now that I've explained why the writing of this social link really speaks to me without mentioning that other thing at all, holy shit! Shelby Young's vocal performance in Reload is phenomenal! I've never seen one voiceover performance dramatically expand a character's fan base overnight like this. Every single line delivery from her sounds so natural, it's nuts! Literal music to my ears. I got excited to play her link, not just because of the great storyline, but just to hear more of those top-notch line deliveries. If Atlas is smart, they're gonna cast Shelby Young as one of the main characters in Persona 6. I think she passed the audition with flying colors. But yeah, I liked Yuko before this voiceover, so you guys are all posers for only liking her now. Yeah.
Yo, Shinji, get in the robot!
You know, on my first playthrough of Persona 3, it was a little hard to see Shinji as anything more than Akihiko's friend. His death obviously hits tremendously hard for being a real wake-up call to the team how serious this struggle is. And it's sad to see them all try and come to terms with it in their own ways, especially Aki. But as a player, it was a little hard to personally feel bad about Shinji's death because of how intentionally emotionally distant he is. I wouldn't call that a failing of the original Persona 3, but I do want to acknowledge just how substantially more compelled I am by this tragic event, thanks to the extra optional screen time both Portable and Reload afforded him. They both went about expanding his character and your relationship to him in different ways. But I'm not really going to compare them because Reload's addition to his character aren't in the form of a social link. Portable is though, exclusively in the FemC route. And yeah, this was a pretty strong addition. We start the link out just hanging out with him one-on-one and seeing how much he cares about Aki and Mitsuru. He's just a little too distant to actually tell them this. Instead, he vents to you about how he hopes they're doing okay and getting the right nutritional value and shit. From there, this develops into another cooking social link, except unlike Fuka's, this one is good. He not only helps her improve at cooking, a great method of showing firsthand how compassionate and doting he is deep down, but in rank 6, he cooks a buffet for everyone. It's such a heartwarming moment, and I like how it's spurred because earlier on, you suggested that he should make food for everybody. This link gives a great sense of the positive impact you're making on Shinjiro, subtly encouraging him to break away from his standoffish demeanor and do nice things for his friends. It's a really sweet and engaging social link. Until you remember that the clock in the upper right hand corner isn't just ticking down to the next full moon battle. Your window to rank Shinji up is limited, because once we reach October 4th, that'll be it. His demise is coming. You probably already know this, since statistically speaking, it's unlikely the FemC route of Portable will be your first rodeo with Persona 3. But those last 3 links do a great job of acknowledging this is Shinji's final chapter, without outright giving it away for the sake of keeping the narrative consistent. They're just so raw and palpable. I mean, the guy is like Jesus right now, you know? He knows he's about to die, but he can't help but feel some hesitancy going through with this. But what kills me is how he second guesses himself explicitly because of FemC. How he says he keeps thinking his life is the way it's supposed to be, but then her face pops up in his head. And rank 9 is easily my favorite. Hell, it's one of my favorites in Persona 3 in general. It's nice to have this evening to just talk normally for hours on end with Shinji. To see him so content with this, despite him knowingly being at the end of his days. And what especially kills me is him requesting you not to forgive him, but to forgive everything else. Obviously, FemC is confused by this, but as a player, knowing that this is his way of imploring you not to blame Ken for his actions is just devastating. How can Shinji be so selfless? I love this link. It's hard to say whether I prefer it or the new stuff with him in Reload. They both go for completely different things and succeed at those different things in equal measure. But with that said, I didn't want to let this impact my ranking, but I do gotta mention that to complete this link, you have to give Shinji his pocket watch back. And doing so will actually make him survive October 4th? What the shit? Yeah, you changed the future. You undoomed him from the narrative. Turns out the watch absorbed the bullet, so instead of dying, he's just in a coma. This is some chicanery. I really hate it. But, you know, that's not the story's fault, so I can just ignore its impact on the rest of the game. I do appreciate the fact that romancing him is kept separate from his actual link, however. It helps the rank 10 event ending feel in line with the previous 2, and not like it's being derailed just because you really want to kiss him. They really got everything right with this link except that stupid-ass survival!
And that's my daddy. He's getting a divorce.
Yeah, in a ton of ways, Maiko is kinda just a beta Nanako. Oh, look at that. She's a little girl you bond with who wants no fighting in her home. But I really do think it was how successful this link was from a narrative standpoint that spurred the Persona 4 team to make your relationship with a little girl be the emotional core of the next game. In other words, Maiko walked so Nanako could run. With that said, the original is still excellent, one of my favorite links in all of Persona 3. It just feels good to help this young girl navigate the messiness of her parents' divorce, and assure her that it's not her fault at all. Wait, what do you mean you can just say it's probably her fault? That's so awful, but so funny. Oh my god. Yeah, you can make some morally dubious choices in this one. From saying shit like that, to encouraging her to run away from her parents. I mean, her parents are pretty awful, especially her dad. Did you know that in the FemC route, he actually hits on you at the end? A teenage girl? What is this guy's problem? But with that said, yeah, running away isn't a great idea, and it's maybe a little strange that you just passively let her do it before her parents show up to look for her. But I don't know, it resolves itself pretty quickly. And ultimately, it does finally assure Maiko that her parents do care about her. By the next rank, she tells you how they finally opened up and compassionately explained their reasons for divorce in a way she'll understand, rather than just saying don't get involved and hitting her. Honestly, I can't think of a character in Persona 3 I hate more than Maiko's dad. But yeah, the whole link is really compelling and emotionally effective. Rank 8 is probably my favorite, but not by too much, because it's all consistently fantastic. Simple, yet extremely effective. And while this isn't being factored into the ranking, I really gotta give her VA and Reload credit for sounding exactly like a little girl. It's even more believable than Nanako's voice, honestly. The only other thing I find kinda weird about this link is when she says she wants to marry you. Like, it's whatever, she's a little kid, you can just let her have this fantasy or whatever. But I don't know, you could have also just had the option to say, no thanks. Oh well, you die a couple months later anyway, so it's no big deal. It's not nearly as weird as when Nanako says she wants to marry her cousin, and Dojima seems pretty chill with that for some reason. What is going on in this series, for the love of God?
Dear Lumpkinella, I know you're a robot, and the secret's safe with me.
I mean, like, Aigis' social link was kinda destined for greatness, right? It's pretty hard to screw up a late game side story about a machine girl with a desire to understand human life and the nature of death, who laments the fact that she could never become as human as she wants to be, while also tying in the central message of the entire game so well. You probably knew this one was gonna be really high. And for me personally, it's almost perfect. There's just one missed opportunity holding it back for me a little bit that I'll get to. It starts out simple enough, with Aigis both expressing her newfound emotions and trying to find an old lady's lost cat. It's a nice reprieve from the ominous sense of impending dread you would otherwise be feeling in January of this game. It's nice for you and Aigis to just stop and smell the roses, doing some simple things together. After returning the cat to the old lady and befriending her, you see her grandson just going to her for money and not spending any time with her. And Aigis seems to resent this a little bit. How someone who is human is neglecting a human bond that she herself doesn't think she can really have. It's really sad seeing her try and come to terms with the fact that other people take the fundamental aspects of humanity that she can't fully connect with for granted. And she also starts musing on the nature of death when the old lady tells her that cats who feel like their life is nearly over will look for a place to wait until the end, which is apparently a common expression. I've never heard this before in my life. This is a decently effective way to get Aigis thinking about the meaning of life and how death factors into it. But this is also the one thing I feel is really missing from the social link, and I don't know if a lot of people will agree with me on this, but I want that old lady dead. Okay, hear me out. The old lady is a sweet and genuine character. I really like her. But wouldn't her sudden death from natural causes that you could hear about from her grandson at school be an especially effective motivator for Aigis to become fixated on death as a concept, rather than just hearing that a cat may die in the near future? It just feels like that's what they were setting up. A meditation on the fragility of life and how it all inevitably comes to an end. Plus, it would give us a chance to see the grandson suddenly have to grieve and realize he should have spent more time with his grandma. Something they could have built a ton of interesting Aigis writing off of. You could say this might undervalue the protagonist's death in the near future, but I don't think it does because Aigis wasn't exactly close to the old lady. They only had a couple of nice interactions, so I don't think it would be a major shakeup to Aigis' life to have her die off screen. Whereas it could have been a major shakeup to her mindset and make her reflection on death hit a lot harder. This is just a me problem though, and really it's the only issue I could muster for an absolutely outstanding social link. Rank 8 is easily one of my favorite ranks in the entirety of Persona 3. For a game with a lot of devastating moments, Aigis expressing how since she's around you all the time and she's only shaped as a human girl, she doesn't want to give the other girls the wrong idea and prevent you from getting close to another human. Oh my god, I just wanted to scream at the screen, no Aigis, you're another human to me! Using her character as an outlet for imposter syndrome was a great idea. It hits devastatingly hard here. And that's on top of her continuing on about how she'll never see herself as human, no matter how much her heart develops. This is consistently cited as one of the most tear-jerking social links in Persona 3, and you can definitely see why, especially when you know what's coming in a couple months. It's fantastic, it embodies the themes of the game extremely well, and yeah, you know what? I'll even say I like the scene where you imprint your DNA on her neck for some reason. Honestly, this might be the most explicit romance in all of Persona. Like, they don't want to show or heavily imply sex, but robo-sex is totally on the table. I think it's a really nice touch for Aigis, a character so concerned with never being able to have intimacy with another person, to have the most intimate moment you can possibly have with someone in the game. Lovely social link, absolutely top notch. I do kind of just wish it had a dead old lady in it. For narrative purposes, of course.
Women.
I remember when it was first confirmed that Reload wouldn't be including the FemC route. I was pretty bummed, but I also understood that it would be a lot more work to incorporate her into something that wasn't a visual novel. Even so, I expressed the hope on Twitter that even without playable FemC, maybe, just maybe they could incorporate her unique social links into Reload. Particularly Sayori's, because I wanted so many more people to experience it. But someone in the comments brought up a good point that really stuck with me. They didn't really want Sayori to be a social link for the male protagonist, because her story just hits harder from the perspective of the FemC. I think I completely get what they mean in hindsight. It's so essential that you view it from the perspective of a female bond of friendship. And it wouldn't work nearly as well if you were the male protag and, God forbid, she was romanceable. Sayori is a bit of an outcast, older than all her peers since she took some gap years, and unable to really connect with any of them as a result. She also doesn't really get the sort of romance her peers experience, is rather naive, and is a bit of a pushover who will do anything anyone asks of her. But damn it, she's just unbelievably sweet. The more you bond with her and discover you're pretty much the only real friend she has here, the more you want to protect her from those petty assholes she goes to school with. The link does a great job of anchoring you with a pretty low stakes problem. She let another student borrow her notes and then they lost them, which she's too mellow and polite to do anything about. Then from there, they ramp up the issues gradually. She says yes to a random boy's invitation for karaoke, and then his girlfriend gets mad at her for it and slaps her. And then these horrible false rumors about her sexual promiscuity make her an outcast at the school. And that's only after she's done being suspended for it. This storyline lays so much awful shit on this innocent, sweet girl. But it's at least heartwarming to get so many opportunities to stick up for her. Not only is the story compelling and tragic, but the individual relationship you form with Sayori just feels so well developed and real. I think it helps that FemC is so much more proactive in this storyline compared to how the protagonists usually act. I feel like the writing style for the social links usually don't give the protagonists too much agency, because the writers don't want them to make any drastic choices that some players at home might not make. But f that, man. Sayori is a social pariah and FemC needs to do something about it. So she suggests going on the intercom to explain to everyone that all these rumors are lies. This happens in rank 9, obviously my favorite of the link, and one of my favorites in general. I especially love how the female teachers sort of take your side in this and get that face of Coda off your back. I don't know, it's not really my place to say, but so much of this link comes across as female solidarity coming together to solve a distinctly female problem. Girls in high school are generally much more prone to be the victim of awful, reputation-ruining rumors than guys are, especially where promiscuity is involved. I think that's why you helping Sayori through this awful situation hits so hard, especially for female players. By the end of it, I was genuinely moved and upset to see her go. But I was happy that she had a desire to be more proactive and stick up for herself at her new school. It gave me a ton of hope that things would work out better for her in the future. Oh, and that one part where she swears for the first time just to see what it feels like. Oh my god, what a wonderful, endearing girl. Honestly, it's almost worth playing the FemC route just for this social link alone. It's absolutely fantastic, and I want as many people as possible to experience it. You know, it's funny. After writing about every other social link in the series, I've kind of been stuck on the ending for a while now. It's hard to decide how to do this one justice with words, after all. I don't think anyone who's played these games will be surprised at all that Akinari is at the top of this list. His storyline has been praised to high heaven and back, and it's incredibly difficult to find anything new to add to the conversation with him. Well, I maybe got something. Persona 3 is a very thematically rich game, with characters who consistently grapple with their mortality and that of the people around them. Ultimately, they discover there are so many reasons to live their life to the fullest, and the meaning they can derive from their relatively short time on Earth can come from something as simple as finding someone to take care of. I appreciate this immensely. Your life absolutely matters, even if you don't accomplish anything grand, because the positive impact you leave in people's lives is inarguably an impact on the world as a whole. But there's always been something else in the back of my mind. Another way to leave an impact on the world that I've always admired in others and hope to do myself eventually. Artistic expression. If you write a story, it has a great chance of being immortal and outliving you. Even if nobody talks about it in 100 years, the impact it can have on people here and now is awe-inspiring. I love when people cultivate stories and share them with the rest of the world. I'm hoping to do that myself eventually, when I have time. I don't know, watch my Whisper of the Heart video, I go over all of it there. Akinari is a young man suffering from a genetic terminal illness. He sits on the park bench every Sunday and waits out his demise, struggling throughout to find the meaning in his life. He unfortunately rejects the philosophy I posited that simply being a part of someone's life is enough for yours to matter, because he thinks of himself as nothing but a burden on his mother. And much like Naoki, he also resents the pity others have for him, on top of the fact that he alone has this burden unfairly forced upon him. Initially, the way he speaks does seem a little melodramatic, but the more time you spend with him, the more you get wrapped up in his trauma and heartache. You also start to feel genuinely connected to him, as he confesses how much he values the time he spends with you, the only person who doesn't seem to look upon him with pity. And his fear of ever finishing a story he reads because he knows he'll just have to go back to his awful reality. It's such a potent and fitting characteristic for him to have. All this stuff is upsetting, but the most significant tearjerkers are yet to come, if you can believe that. Akinari eventually starts writing his own story, one just for himself. A heartwarming tale to help him find the meaning in his own life. It's cute. There's a pink alligator who can't hunt, but it befriends a tiny little bird. Aww, how sweet. And then the alligator accidentally eats the bird. Oh. Akinari's writing process effectively and tragically conveys his mindset. One so entrenched in despair and sorrow that his heartwarming story takes such a dark turn, and he doesn't even realize most people would consider it dark. And that's where he leaves the story off for a bit, struggling to find the ending exactly how he struggles to find the meaning in his own life. It's a perfect and powerful metaphor. Not entirely subtle or difficult to grasp, but just so effective and beautiful. As much as I love hearing the story in ranks 6 and 7, 8 and 9 are really effective methods of portraying Akinari's burgeoning acceptance of his fate. He stops taking his medication since it won't keep him alive, and he doesn't want his hands to go numb so he can write. And he checks out of the hospital for good, just awaiting his death with nothing left to do except finish the story. Throughout these ranks, you get the sense that he's found the answer to life's greatest question, accepting death as a natural part of life, and using the time he has left to leave behind a piece of art. The shocking amount of thematic overlap between this optional social link side character and the main plot of the game is staggering. It feels like a waste to not do this link because of how well it connects to the overall message of the game as a whole. I personally couldn't stop thinking about Akinari's words throughout most of the endgame. But then we arrive at rank 10. Absolutely my favorite part of the link. We hear how the story ends, with the alligator crying so much that he drowns in his own tears. But from those tears, a sparkling lake with beautiful flowers and a tree that bears delicious fruit is born. And so the animals of the forest enjoy what the alligator left behind, even if they never knew him. I think this line is what really got me.
Even though the alligator didn't find meaning in his life, the residents of the forest did. They just didn't realize it.
Do you think Kanji or Nanako, when they reference the pink alligator story in Persona 4, have any idea who wrote it? Most likely not, but they do know about the fruit that came about from its author's sorrow. The fruit that probably touched the lives of countless children. Akinari finds contentment, not in definitively knowing the meaning of his life, but just knowing that he was able to make a difference in the lives of others. This conclusion gets me every time, as does the epilogue where we meet his mother. I'm just kinda stunned that the social link is this incredible and this thematically relevant to its game. It really stands head and shoulders above the rest, and it's especially impressive coming from Persona 3, aka the series' first try at social links in general. They knocked it not only out of the park, but into the stratosphere, and I couldn't be happier. I adore Akinari's social link. It's incredibly hard not to, and I have to call it my pick for the best social link in Persona 3. Whew! Alright, I'm finally done with the social links in every game. Now all that's left to do is what I planned to do at the beginning of all this. Make one big video putting them all together, and seeing how each of them stack up. No, it's not just an excuse for me to reuse all these parts and put them all in one video to get more ad revenue. It is my artistic vision finally fully achieved. Look forward to that, perhaps. Good night, Tatsumi Port Island.